Hey everyone, and welcome. Today's deep dive takes us into the world of South Indian cinema.
Definitely a world worth exploring.
It sure is, and specifically, we're going to be taking a close look at the career of actress Oviya Helen. Now, you might have seen her name in the headlines recently, and let's just say there's a lot more to her story than meets the eye.
Yeah, that's what makes this so interesting, right? You've got this potential controversy swirling around, but then you look at her career and it's full of really interesting roles, collaborations, like there's a lot to unpack there.
Okay, so let's back up for a second. For those of us who might not be as familiar with the South Indian film industry, could you give us a little bit of background on Oviya Helen? Like, who is she?
Absolutely. So Oviya, whose real name is actually Helen Nelson, first appeared on screen back in 2010. Her debut film was a Tamil language film called Kalavani. And just a quick note for listeners who are new to this, Tamil cinema is a huge part of the South Indian film industry, known for its action, drama, and of course, those incredible dance numbers.
Oh, I love a good dance number.
Who doesn't?
So after Kalavani, what were some of the breakout roles that really put her on the map?
Well, she had parts in some pretty notable films, movies like Marina, Mudar Kudam, and Madayana Kutam. So you can already see she's working with different genres and directors. But I think it was really her role in the 2012 film Kala Kalapu that made people take notice.
It's funny how we often only hear about that one big break, right? Like, we see the success, but not always all the hard work that goes on behind the scenes. But before we dive deeper into her career, I do want to address something that's mentioned in our source material. There's this alleged video circulating online, and while we can't verify its authenticity, it does feel important to at least acknowledge it.
Yeah, you have to, right? It's out there, and it speaks to this larger issue of how quickly rumors, especially about public figures, can spread like wildfire in the digital age, and you throw in the whole deepfake phenomenon, and it gets really complicated really fast.
Oh, deepfakes. That's a whole other deep dive waiting to happen. It does make you think about the responsibility we all have when it comes to, what we're sharing online, especially when it involves someone's personal life. But putting that aside for a moment, I think it's important to acknowledge that Oviya Helen's career, all her work, it deserves to be recognized on its own merit. And one thing that really stood out to me was her venture into Bollywood.
Right, and that's no small feat, making that transition to the Hindi language film industry.
For sure. So her Bollywood debut was in 2015 with the film Yeah Ishq Sarfira. But from what I'm reading, it didn't exactly set the box office on fire.
Yeah, and that's interesting because it highlights how challenging it can be, even for established actors, to break into a different film industry. Bollywood has its own rhythm, its own audience expectations. It's not as simple as just, showing up.
It's almost like it's a whole different ballgame, right?
Totally. And that just makes her career trajectory even more intriguing, don't you think? Because she didn't just chase Bollywood dreams and that's it. She kept working in Tamil cinema, carving her own path.
And that leads us perfectly to her latest project, this film, Contractor Nesamani. So tell me, what's the deal with this film? What makes it stand out?
Well, first off, she's acting alongside Yogi Babu, who is like a comedic legend in Tamil cinema. Think like the comedic genius of someone like, say, Will Ferrell, but with this unique South Indian twist.
Okay, now that's a pairing I've got to see. It's amazing how the right cast can really make a movie.
Oh, absolutely. And in this case, it seems like a pretty strategic move for Oviya. I mean, working with someone as established and beloved as Yogi Babu, that's going to get her in front of a huge audience. Plus, it's going to be funny.
Yeah, it's like she's saying, I'm back, I'm here to stay, and we're going to have a good laugh along the way. Speaking of reaching audiences, our source material mentions that Oviya is quite the Instagram queen, right? With over 700,000 followers.
Yeah.
Seems like she's got a knack for connecting with fans online.
It really is fascinating to see how South Indian film stars use social media. It feels much more, personal and direct than some Hollywood celebs, There's this sense of, genuine interaction.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Makes you wonder if it's a cultural thing or maybe just how the industry operates or maybe a bit of both.
Right. It's a whole other layer to explore. But what it highlights for me is that actors today, they've got to be so savvy online. It's not just about the big screen anymore. They're managing their image, engaging with fans, really shaping how they're perceived.
And it makes you think about that whole thing with the video we talked about earlier, right? The one that may or may not be real. It's like public figures today, they're under a microscope constantly. It's got to be tough to deal with that level of scrutiny and the potential for misinformation to spin out of control. No doubt about it. It's a lot to unpack, really. We're talking about the intersection of entertainment, technology, ethics. It gets pretty deep pretty fast.
It really makes you realize, like, there are real people behind those headlines,
Totally. And I think that's what makes Oviya Helen's story so compelling. It's like, it's not over.
Yeah.
She's had her ups and downs, tried different things, and she's still figuring it all out.
And we get to see that play out, not just in the movies she makes, but online, too. Exactly. And that actually brings up a really important question for all of us to consider. Like, how do we engage with all of this stuff we see online, especially when it comes to, like, celebrities or public figures? Are we, like, actually thinking about where this information is coming from? Are we questioning it? Or are we just hitting that share button without a second thought?
It's easy to get caught up in the gossip, the rumors, but at the heart of it all, there's a person.
Absolutely. And while we've been focusing on Oviya Helen's story today, it really speaks to a much bigger conversation, about how we navigate this online world and the responsibility we all have in shaping the narrative.
So well said. And if you're listening and curious to see Oviya's work, I definitely recommend checking out her films. There's something for everyone. Who knows, maybe this deep dive will even inspire you to explore the world of South Indian cinema a little bit more. Thanks for joining us, everyone. This was a fascinating one to unpack.